This video, this channel is sponsored by the XX Network, so I have a bias towards the XX Network. I am not a financial advisor. All investments have risk. The trouble with most of us is that we would rather be ruined by praise than saved by criticism.
I mean, there's leaders from around the world here, at least the sessions I'm going to, maybe it's because it's crypto. I just think, like, you know, the US is an important economy, but there's a lot, Ripple's business is 95% non-US. And so sometimes I find it to be a little bit too dominating.
95% of Ripple's clients are outside of the United States.
I think it applies to government services. I met today with the Prime Minister of a country, and
the Prime Minister of Montenegro tweeted that he met with Ripple as well as James Wallace, and he, quote, "a productive meeting with the CEO of company and VP of Cooperation with Central Banks, James Wallace. We discussed the development of a payment infrastructure that would provide greater financial accessibility and inclusion. Montenegro is open to new value and investments. In cooperation with Ripple and the Central Bank, we launched a pilot project to build the first digital currency or stablecoin for Montenegro." Now, Montenegro's economy is Euroized, which means that they're not part of the European Union, but they're using euros as a currency. Now, this came back into my previous video that I did. Now, does the ECB need to have some type of XRP ledger technology in order to accept euros from Montenegro? And what we know about digital currencies is the smaller nations are the first ones to take the risk because they have a lot more to win and a little less to lose in case something goes wrong. So we're going to see these smaller nations migrate to digital currencies first, and as it's proven to be successful, that's when larger and larger companies, larger and larger nations rather, get into these digital currencies. Now, what Ripple is doing is very important because if all these little countries are already using the XRP ledger, that's going to be the dominant network, and automatically the medium-sized countries are going to adopt the XRP ledger because the smaller ones have it, right? So it's proven, it's battle tested, not to mention you already have the network effect. You have all these little countries building off of the top of it. And what's happening with federated side chains, with the AMM, is you're setting up a network that's going to expand. You're going to see all these little tiny ledgers, all these different countries build their own ledgers that are centralized, and then they're going to have accessibility to the public XRP ledger, which you could equate to being like a layer 0, and all these little countries are layer 1s. Not to mention just the whole entire crypto space is moving on to that type of design. We saw with Fluff World, Fluffverse, that's the design that they're using for their metaverse network that's going to utilize XRP. Piercist, which was written about in the quarterly report, is talking about an EVM sidechain that talks directly to the XRP ledger. And they are also working with the Central Bank of Colombia, the government of Colombia, to put real estate onto the XRP ledger, or an instance of the XRP ledger, which would be a federated sidechain.
They're very excited about using blockchain for land registry. Think about the title insurance business.
So inefficient.
Big intermediary, and they take a lot of value. If we had blockchain-based title management of ownership of who owns which property, arguably title insurance would change dramatically. That's a big industry to think about. Again, for YPRs to think out into the horizon about what these technologies mean. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why I compare blockchain to the early days of the internet. I had the good fortune of coming out of business school in '97 as the internet was kind of, as we know it today, being birthed.
Title insurance is a very costly process. There's a few large databases that have all of the deed information. Fidelity is one of those large databases. Title companies will pay Fidelity to go through their database and prove that the land was passed from buyer to seller, the whole chain of buy and sells to present. It's a very time-consuming process, and some land can't even be sold because there's a break in title. So in the 1930s, some deed was not recorded properly, and therefore today you can't sell your land. So imagine if you're paying HOA fees and taxes on an asset that you can't sell. By taking those databases and putting them on a blockchain, all this work could be instantaneous. As soon as somebody has the token, that means that they own the land, and it's all recorded and distributed. These fees that the title insurance takes is very costly, thousands of dollars to sell real estate. If this was instantaneous and there is no title company taking large fees, what would that do to the United States market for land if you're able to buy and sell real estate quickly and cheaply and efficiently?
I think that we're going to have what I would say is government action that completely pushes this technology outside the financial system. I don't think it's going to go that far. Do I think that, go back to what we did with what I would say is the ICO crackdown? Do I think people are going to look at other aspects of this market and say, you know what, let's demonstrate that the traditional securities laws in their substance apply to this form of technology? Yes, I think that's going to happen. I think it's been happening.
There's all types of fear-mongering in the crypto space that the SEC is going to come in and clean up house. Well, Jay Clayton disagrees with that. He thinks it's going to be the standard, how they have been running things, enforcement action after enforcement action, surely but slowly, and then they get the rest of crypto into compliance. Now, this is very different than what's being presented and the fear-mongering that's going on. So out of Jay Clayton's mouth, that they're not going to just drive every company overseas and push crypto out of existence.
Yeah, so the social preview for that piece, if I remember it, is central bank digital currencies will basically soak up the last vestiges of personal privacy, and they should be vehemently opposed. Central bank digital currencies are the ultimate Trojan horse of government interference in your life. And the expectation of privacy is not a disease. It's not something to be scorned. Humans have a fundamental right to privacy. And ever since 9/11, the ongoing continuous encroachment and the buildup of the surveillance state is real, undeniable, and has deeply negative consequences for human freedom. And I don't care what anybody says. If you should be pro-freedom. The government is not your friend anymore. The government only knows how to do one thing: grow and control. And the U.S. was not set up to have a surveillance state and a federal government that is 30% of GDP, and unaccountable politicians who gerrymander their districts so that effectively they can't ever lose, and they stay in politics for 30 years, and they enter politics broke and they leave politics centimillionaires. That's not how the system is supposed to work. The system is broken, and we should fight to fix it. It's worth fixing.
Privacy is a fundamental right. This technology is transparent by default. As the central banks integrate digital currencies, they will have insight into our entire financial history. Glenn Hutchins, former Federal Reserve and Ripple investor, has stated that the next buzzwords will be zero-knowledge proofs. I created a Speakeasy for crypto research. This is a completely private social media platform you can join for free. The invite is in the description below. The purpose of Speakeasy is like a Discord or Telegram, but all of your metadata is stripped from every message, and your messages are sent through a decentralized mixing network.
And central bank digital currency is the last. We think you're in a canoe going over Niagara Falls. Once we have central bank digital currencies, the government will see everything you do, will be able to control it. They're going to implement it next time there needs to be a stimulus. If you want your $10,000 stimmy, you got to go sign up at fedcoin.com and give them all your personal information. They'll give you the sugar high of the free 10 grand. And then next thing you know, Bobby's going to get an email or a text message from FedCoin that says, hey, Bobby, you kind of drive a lot of miles this month. I don't think you should be allowed to buy gasoline anymore. And you probably had a little bit too much sugar. And, if you become obese, that's going to affect the Medicare system. So you've bought your calories for the month. We're going to go ahead and stop all transactions on FedCoin that allow you to buy high carb food at the grocery store. And then, even better, your carbon footprint, Bob, and your friend Jim is pretty bad too. You're not allowed to travel to New York this week because you've already taken 2 flights this year, and your carbon footprint has exceeded your allowable budget. A budget which will, of course, shrink over time. And so you can say that I'm a conspiracy theorist or that this is whack or that this is out there. A BS. This is coming. This is the intent. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. And we better fight it now, or you're never going to be able to fight it once it's here.
Privacy advocates are often dismissed as paranoid, but the fact is that these things are happening and historically have happened. The erosion of privacy sets a very dangerous precedent. In China, reporters that wrote critical articles about the CCP were barred from using their money. In Nazi Germany, the banks were ordered to spy on Jewish citizens. This is why Europe is more sensitive to privacy, because it hits home.
And unaccountable politicians who gerrymander their districts so that effectively they can't ever lose, and they stay in politics for 30 years, and they enter politics broke and they leave politics centimillionaires.
Through a FOIA request, obtained emails from Warren's office to the office of Chairman Gary Gensler 2 days before his Senate testimony back in September of 2021. The email from Warren's economic policy advisor includes a list of questions. Get this, a list of questions that Senator Warren planned to ask, along with suggested answers for the chairman of the SEC. The advisor also wrote, quote, "Let me know if you're okay with the questions as currently written." 2 days later, she sent a follow-up, quote, "Let me know if it's looking like the chair has any issue with the framing of the questions. Definitely don't want to put him in a tough spot," end quote. And it appears the chairman didn't have any issue with these questions because Senator Warren asked almost verbatim from the email.
It has come to light that Elizabeth Warren has given Gary Gensler congressional testimony questions in advance and how to answer them. Warren has praised Gensler as the sheriff of crypto and has publicly stated that he's doing a great job. Warren is a multimillionaire that has been quite a vocal critic of the crypto industry. She's pulling strings behind closed doors to further her political agenda. An elected representative should be at the people's interests. This is what Doomberg is referring to, these career politicians that are unaccountable and have generated millions in wealth while in office. This is a broken system, and she's a shining example of it.
And long awaited. The grapevine tells me that is on the cusp of actually being released as a joint effort with Her Majesty's Treasury. So we really should be expecting that to be published soon. Also, the other activity in the UK, the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, in collaboration with the Bank of England as well, have recently announced phase 2 of what they call Project Rosalind, which is actually to explore innovative retail CBDC use cases and build prototypes, which is exactly the kind of exploration and thinking that both this webinar will talk about and then the DPF use case work group is looking to get into. So it's a very active space.
The Bank of England is a paying Ripplenet customer. Now pay attention to James Wallace's body language when the project is discussed. Project Rosalind is a CBDC project for the Bank of England. Look at James Wallace's facial expressions, his body language, makes him quite uncomfortable.
And other vendors sort of work to establish the standards for deploying DLT responsibly and optimally in the context of CBDCs. So this includes considerations like who should run nodes in a particular deployment, and how should those nodes be managed? What level of redundancy is required to truly make a network secure? And
Bitt is a company that offers central banks a digital currency solution, and as you can see that they were integrated with Stellar. This conference was by ITU, and ITU is a specialized agency of the United Nations.
They're really pretty interesting. So there's a handful of new extensions that will be coming out. Here's 2 of them that have not been made public yet. And I think this first one's really interesting these days. And, we're seeing a lot of concern about inflation and macroeconomic policy and so on. And, I was kind of hobnobbing with various central bankers who are very concerned about these issues from various countries. And through these conversations, it emerged that this is something they really wanted, was to be able to see kind of aggregate real-time monitoring of the payment system. And what seemed to be the most interesting would be, for instance, which categories of consumers or payers purchased how much from which categories of goods and services. And and to be able to monitor those aggregate values in real time. And I think that makes sense that kind of analysis could really help you see how your macroeconomic policy is affecting the economy, so that because there's
At ITU, David Chaum proposed the idea of a CBDC that would ensure users' privacy but grant central banks real-time access to data and spending. This would revolutionize monetary policy, as central banks currently rely on lagging information. With access to real-time data, they could have much more nuanced insights into economic activity. These insights could open up numerous possibilities. We struggle with the complexities and avoid the simplicities. Thanks everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you enjoy content like this, please consider joining my Patreon.